Hello, everyone. How are you? Welcome to our second Makar to Makar. Tonight, we've got a really wonderful lineup for you. We've got the really fantastic poet and jazz musician, Don Paterson. Not only does Don's guitar music fuse the wonderful world of electronics, Celtic world and the jazz world, but his poetry too is multi-voiced, and it can be at times tender, lyrical, witty, simple, complex, and true. And it's extraordinary, his poetry, because he's just as likely to be fired up and to take as his inspiration Orpheus as he is the Twilight Zone. He's a man of many interests and a man of many talents. He's professor at St Andrews University. He's a poetry editor at Picador. He's published several really wonderful books of poetry, amongst them 40 Sonnets and Rain. His latest book is Zonal. He's written books on poetry itself and written books on Shakespeare. He is the multi-talented wonder that is Don Patterson. Please welcome him to Makar. Welcome, Don.
Hi, Jackie. How are you doing?
Fine, thanks. It's good to see you. Welcome to our Zoom room. Now, the idea behind Makar is to bring home entertainment to people to their living rooms. I'm the third modern Makar. I followed Edwin Morgan and Liz Lockhead. Makar isn't a word that's exclusively used to describe Scottish writers. In fact, Chaucer was referred to as a Makar by Dunbar. So it's a really interesting thing. And in this program, the idea of it is that we pass the baton Makar to Makar. The nearest English equivalent is maker. So Makar to Makar, maker to maker. It's wonderful to have Don here. He's going to be reading some brand new poems as well as some older favourites, and he's also going to be playing the guitar. In the Zoom room with us, with me and Don, is the wonderful singer Katharine Philpott. She's just going to say hello for now, and I'm going to introduce her properly later on. Hello, Katharine.
Hello, hi.
How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Excited to see everything.
Great. Well, Catherine's in Glasgow, Don's in Edinburgh. I'm going to read this little poem just to kick us off, and this is called Small. It's always the small that gets you, a wee act of kindness, the tiniest detail, a stranger's caress, your heart, the way you react when faced with the trials, the gift of a bluebell, an embrace, oh, the yellow gorse, the small brown foals, the crows lined up from the train window, beauty, inches close to sorrow. Now, Don, I'm really delighted that you're here. Just so exciting, and it just feels wonderful. And you're going to take us away with a guitar piece, aren't you, of Aphon Kiss?
Yeah, I think I'll mount a brief jazz destruction of a much loved Scottish song. So this is just a Burn song called Aphon Kiss. I'll just There we go.
That was wonderful. That was wonderful. I loved it. I loved kind of straining to hear the bits that are familiar and then welcoming the bits that are not. So I like the kind of the mashup there. That's jazz for you. Yeah. That's jazz, exactly. But I think you're gonna read for us now and be starting off with Rain, which is a poem that made such an impact on so many people, and it's the title of a whole book, and the whole book made a massive impact on people. Rain itself is one of my particular favorites because it takes me back to the movies, and it also kind of makes me think of all sorts of things, different things all at once. It makes me see every single scene. Also makes me think of, you know, pathetic fallacy and of ways of ending things, and of real life and versus art, and the ways in which film and poems work together. So it's just one of these poems that is so complex, and yet so simple as well. And that's I really love it. Would you kick us off by reading Rain?
Nice. Rain. I love all films that start with rain. Rain braiding a window pane, or darkening a hung-out dress, or streaming down her upturned face. One big thundering downpour right through the empty script and score, before the act, before the blame, before the lens pulls through the frame to where a woman sits alone beside a silent telephone, or the dress lies ruined on the grass, or the girl walks off the overpass. And all things flow out from that source along their fatal watercourse. However bad or overlong, such a film can do no wrong. So when his native twang shows through, or when the boom dips into view, or when her speech starts to betray its adaptation from the play, I think to when we open cold in a starlit gutter, running gold with the neon of a drugstore sign, and I read into its blazing line. Forget the ink, the milk, the blood, all was washed clean with a flood. We rose up from the falling waters, the fallen rain's own sons and daughters, and none of this matters.
Sorry, that was wonderful. And would you continue reading us another few poems, and then we can have a wee chat after those?
Of course, I can. Forgive me, coughing. It's non-COVID. The roundabout for Jamie and Russ. It's moving still, that wooden roundabout we found at the field's end, stuck in the grass like an ancient buckler from the Giants' War. The first day of good weather, our first out after me and your mother. Its thrawn mass was like trying to push a tree over or row a galley sealed in ice. I was all for giving up when we felt it give and go. What had saved the axle all those years? It let out one great drawn-out yawn and swung away like 100 gates. Our hands still burning, we lay and looked up at a sky so clear there was nothing in the world to prove our turning but our light heads and the wind's lung. And I'll read excuse me, a wee frog in my throat there. I'll read a couple of versions of poems by a poet called Gabriela Mistral, who everybody should know really, because everybody knows Neruda, the other famous Chilean poet. But Mistral was a little earlier. She was a wonderful mid-century poet, great educator, feminist activist, won the Nobel Prize like Neruda, but I think she's better. So I've been doing some Scots versions of her poems. I think they're fairly self-explanatory. I don't think there's much I'll have to gloss in the first one. It's about poverty, really. Skyre is shine. Burst is bruised. Other than that, I think you'll get it. It's just called Wee Feet. Twa wee feet, twa sapphires of pine. How can they gang by and no see them? A hacket and burst by snow and stain. How blin they are. Wherever you stop, your footprints skyre. Wherever you stell your bloody souls, wild roses bloom. Twa wee feet, how can they gang by and no see them? The second one of Mistral's is called the Pines, and actually I'll just gloss it in English quick, otherwise, because it's quite dense. If we go into the woods the night, I can't even gloss it in English because I'm now mentally thinking in Scots. If we go into the woods tonight, the trees will try to kiss your forehead, but since they're too high to bend down, I'll stop to lift you up to them. The night is counting all its animals, all but the pines who never change. Hark, their old wounds still weep the amber of the eternal evenings. If they could, they'd take you up and bear you along from valley to valley, from arm to arm, like a child, from mother to mother to mother. Pines. If a gang until the woods the nicht, the trees will try to kiss your pow, but sin their guy height to beck down, I'll stop to heist you up to them. The next is Compton, its beasts, but the pines, where ne'er change. Hark, their old sayers still weep the llama with the eye biding evens. If they could, they'd tack you up and bear you along from glen to glen, from aim to aim, like a bairn, from mother to mother to mother.
Oh, they were absolutely beautiful, Don. Thanks so much. I really particularly love those ones based on Gabriela Mistral. And I know I find it strange that everybody knows Neruda and people don't know her.
I know, yeah.
And she was 1945, wasn't it, that she got the Nobel Prize, and her work really is full of emotion and very direct. She's really interested in children and in death and you know, tenderness. And I find it interesting to compare her and you as a poet, because you have so many complex ideas in your poems, but they're very, very clear. And it seems to me at a time, these times that we're living in, we kind of lack clarity. It's driving some of us crazy that there is no real clarity. And yet in these poems that you read, they're really, really clear, clear messages in them, as well as clear emotion. I was wondering what you think about that, those notions as a poet of direct language and complex language. And
yeah, I think increasingly it's incumbent on us to be clear. I think, and the problem is, as you say, it's just like a lot of the solutions or the things that we'll have to think about just now are really complex. But I think the more kind of nuanced and complex our subject matter, the greater our obligation is to find some clear expression for it. And there's been this rather bizarre kind of sort of modernist tradition, of finding complex language for complex things, which I've never entirely understood, and I think, there's something about poetry, something about the machine of writing poetry that just seems to be about finding the kind of the simplest expression for those complex things. But as Einstein would say, simple but no simpler. So it's just you keep it but you can so if you keep it too simple, then you're just lying. So it's
yeah, because in that one that you call Wee Feet, taken from the one that's translated from the Spanish, is tiny feet. In that original kind of translation for the English, it's father to father, and in your poem, it's mother to mother. And I really love that you've done that. But I wonder, when you're doing that in translation, what kind of decisions are you making, and what are you thinking about?
It's funny. It's just like you have to decide what you're being useful too. And I think if you're a proper translator and you've actually got Spanish, you know, and I really don't, you can declare a fidelity to the original. You know, you can say, I'm going to try and bring some of that out. In my case, all I can do is get close to the subjective spirit of the thing as I perceive it, you know, so that's all I'm trying to do, you know, and that means that all you're trying to do at the end of the day is get a poem that'll work in English or Scots in this case, you know, so any decision that you take sort of has to justify itself, but it could be any decision. So if you want to whimsically, you know, so there's nothing whimsical about it, but if you change father to mother, I appreciate that's a big decision, but if I feel that that gets me closer to what I took from the original, then I'm obliged to you know, to make that change, you know. A lot of folk would say, no, you're betraying the work of the original author, but that's not what translation is about for me. It's about recognizing that the text is in flight, and this is where you capture it in your life at this time, you know. It's what it is to you.
Yeah, no, I absolutely, completely agree with that, because there's no such thing as the fidelity. Actually, is a matter of the fidelity to the original emotion. It's not a faith to the particulars, if you know what I mean. And,
yeah, ultimately, I think that has to be, you know, it, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And in, you know, talking about flight, you know, a poem like Rain takes us in flight, you know, from stanza to stanza, from image to image, and we think several different complex things at once, till when we get to the very last stanza and then the very last line, and we've got the ink and the milk, and everything feels a bit split, or they feel like things that could be split. We're asking ourselves, I have asked myself loads and loads of questions about that poem and its ending. I love going over it. I'm not particularly wanting you to explain it to me. What I would love you to talk about is how much you love a kind of a mystery too, being at the heart of your poems. There's clarity, but there's also mystery, and that's not a contradiction in terms.
I think that's your only guarantee that you're onto something. You know, it's just like, I mean, it's literally my test for whether I've got something half decent in the go is when I've been writing away and I get up in the morning and I look at it, and if I don't understand what I've written, I know that I might have something, and if I do understand it, I know it's not good. Because what it lacks in that case is that leap into the mysterious from what you know into what you don't, or what you want to find out about, you know. And if that's not there, then you're just telling people what they know already, you know. So and I also don't think it's that important that I have, you know, that I really understand my own poems too well. I don't think that's my job, you know. I think it's fine not to understand your poems, and in fact, when you're not too sure what it is that you're writing, but you know that it holds together as a composition somehow, there's a greater chance that other folk will see themselves in it, I think, you know. Whereas if it's your narrow view, there's a danger that it remains just your view. And I think your job is to throw things into the world in which other folk can see their lives reflected, you know.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And your work often takes these massive leaps in time and across form and across interests, and we have a sense really of your voice in many of your poems as being the ocean one minute, the sky the next, the voice of a man, a disappointed man the next. You know, the voice of your poems is different, but it's also it's not established itself by kind of creating wee voices to speak in. You know, it's got a great panoramic kind of epic stretch to it, and I find that really interesting. It's almost as if you were to particularize the voice too much, you would also narrow it down.
Well, it helps having no personality, I always say, you know, so it's just...
and I'm wondering, you know, because you play the guitar, I'm wondering what kind of relationship there is for you with music and with poetry, or if any, if you find that when you pick up your guitar, you have a kind of similar feeling to when you pick up a pen to write, or if they're completely different.
No, really, I used to say there was no connection at all, and that was an idiot talking. I mean, clearly, if you do any, you know, if you do two things and you're the same person, they're going to talk to each other. But I do hear the music as just vowel, you know. So I hear just music as one big vowel, and vowels in language are how we communicate emotion, and how we communicate very personal feelings that fall beyond language, you know, that you can't put into words, you know. So music's kind of for everything that I can't write a poem about, I suppose, you know. But that's where the vowel starts and just goes on, you know.
Really,
I've never figured it out.
well, that's good as well, I guess. And it's really, really handy. I mean, God, I would love to be able to have both. We're really lucky today to have the wonderful Katharine Philpott with us in the Zoom room, as it were. And Katharine's got the most extraordinary singing voice. I find it really haunting. I often sort of hear it going on in my head. The last time that I heard you sing live, Katharine, was also at my dad's show in the wonderful Glasgow Theatre or in Moore. And I remember when I got back to my house that night, or my parents' house that night in Bishopbriggs, my next door neighbours who'd been there in Oran Moor, they had you playing in loudspeaker into the garden, and there was something extraordinarily comforting to me, and that was it. And they were going, "Who was that lassie? Who was that lassie?" You just stood there and just did it, and there's something extraordinarily comforting to me about returning to that song of yours, the Star of the Bar. But at the moment you're going to actually sing a different song, that is a response to Don's first reading of poems. So what song are you going to? Yeah. So what song are you going to sing now, Katharine, and why?
So I'll be singing "Crow on the Cradle," which I think was originally an English folk poem, I think. And I've heard so many adaptations of this song by so many different artists. But the thing that made me pick it was when I was reading through Don's poem Rain, there were certain sort of points in that poem that just sort of made me feel the same way that I felt when I hear my really good friend Iona perform this song. So she's a folk musician and she's performed it with an ensemble of hers. And there is just something about, it's just the imagery within the poem. There's a certain line, it's the ink, milk, blood bit at the end, that for me just sort of, maybe it's a bit of a sort of, I'm not too sure, maybe a depressing interpretation of the poem or of that line. But for me, that just sort of makes me think of possibly the insignificance of sort of human life and sort of creating and writing and actually what it is to be human. And that's what I get from this song as well. And that's why I picked it, because it felt right. It feels like they just go together really well. So that's lovely, Katharine. This one.
That's lovely, Katharine. Can we hear you singing?
Yes. The sheep's in the meadow, the cows in the corn. Now is the time for a child to be born. You'll laugh at the moon and you'll cry for the sun. And if it's a boy, he will carry a gun. Sang the crow on the cradle. And if it should be that this baby's a girl, never you mind if her hair doesn't curl. With rings on her fingers and bells on her toes, and a bomber above her wherever she goes. Sang the crow on the cradle. The crow on the cradle, the black and the white. Somebody's baby was born for a fight. The crow on the cradle, the white and the black. Somebody's baby is not coming back. Sang the crow on the cradle. Your mother and father will sweat and they'll say to build you a coffin and dig you a grave. Hush, my little one, never you weep, for we've got a toy that will put you to sleep. Sang the crow on the cradle. Bring me a gun and I'll shoot that bird dead. That's what your mother and father once said. The crow on the cradle, what shall we do? This is a thing that I'll leave up to you. Sang the crow on the cradle.
Oh, that was so beautiful. That's really, really beautiful.
Thank
That
you.
also gets inside your head, that refrain. It's really, really lovely.
Oh, thank you.
God, you started your love for music started how or when?
I think it probably started when I was about, for this sort of genre of music, like traditional folk, that sort of thing, it started when I was probably about 12, 13, something like that. So like both my parents are massive fans of Scotland and the Highlands, and sort of dragging me and my brother on mad walking holidays when we were little. And there was one year that we went to, I think it was the Oban Folk Festival, and my brother, I think, was quite ill, so my mum stayed at the youth hostel with him, and me and my dad went to this gig, and I want to say it was Katharine Philpott that was performing, but it might not have been. That could have been another time. But there was just something that I found so hauntingly beautiful about the way she could take these really sort of sad songs and tales of sort of like unrequited love and loss and make them so beautiful. And it's something that me and my dad really, really connected over, because so my mum's not a massive fan of the dreary folk music. My brother, it just goes right over his head. So for us, that was something that we kind of bonded over, and it became a sort of a tradition that we'd go to like folk gigs. We'd listen to like CDs for hours and hours and hours in his music room together. And it was him, well, it used to sort of be the fact that I would only ever actually sing if my dad had asked me to sing, because I was sort of deathly shy. I hated singing in front of people, and I would only do it if my dad asked me to do it. And that would just be like family gatherings. He once convinced me to do it at sort of a town talent show, which went terribly because they chose the wrong backing track for me, and I was sort of up on stage in front of all these people, wrong backing tracks playing. I was like 14. I was like, didn't know what to do, so I'm trying to like sing over this backing track, which one of the judges then described as syncopated. And I was like, well, no, it wasn't syncopated, it was wrong, but brilliant. So that's sort of where that began.
What did you think, Don, of that song?
What, the song Cat just sang?
Yeah.
I mean, I love it. I mean, I only sort of know it in Judy Collins' version, I think. But I don't think I've heard a version that was unaccompanied, and it's an absolute chiller. It's an absolute chiller, and you know, and just hearing it sung in that way. I mean, I'll no sleep tonight. But I mean, it's just like I've heard it umpteen times, and I still can't fathom it. I mean, it does have that sort of genuinely poetic quality about sort of dealing with these just weird symbols that get under your skin, and you sort of you think you know what it's saying allegorically or something, and it just kind of flies away, you know. But it's a chiller.
Yeah.
It really is. It really is. And I sort of love the idea that we kind of half get things and half don't, and that's partly what we love. We love to kind of feel like we've properly taken something into our heart, but that we still can't fathom it. And it seems to me that might be one of the reasons that people love poetry and song so much, because you kind of get it and you don't get it simultaneously. It's both. It's an experience of both, and we live in a world that's always asking us to choose, you know, either or. But actually, we can say both, can't we?
Yeah, I mean, it's just about making a connection, you know, which involves both, and which, you know, as you say, you know, it steers you away from these easy binaries, and we know that the world doesn't work that way, you know. So poetry is a good way of leaping the gap between each other sometimes, you know.
It's going to be great to hear some more of your poems, Don. I was really struck with the poem I think you were going to choose to read next, the Song of Being Human, which is really the Song of the Human, I should say, the Song of the Human, which is from Zonal, from your new book, but it seemed really oddly apt for today's times. When I was reading it, I was thinking, what?
Yeah, I thought it was it was just a wee squib that I sort of, that I kind of shoehorned into the book, and I thought, oh, that'll be a laugh. I knew it reads like Nostradamus, it's just, yeah. I'll read that, shall I?
Yeah, and read your other, yeah, give us your next reset, that'd be fantastic.
Sure. So this is the Song of the Human. There are days like this when I remember I am living in a glass box marked Earth creature in his own habitat, except the visitors have long gotten bored at the sight of the bald ape who sits all day scratching at a piece of paper, eating sullenly from a cereal, playing his funny little twang box, and have wandered off in search of more interesting exhibits. Last week I tried the door and found it unlocked. I guess with everything falling apart, security is of least concern, and I can now go out of a wish, explore the burning planet, and try to converse and breed with the weeping natives. But to be honest, I think I have become institutionalized, and I am disinclined to wander far. And I'll read a bit from a poem called Lazarus, which is the last poem in Zonal, and I think I wanted to read a bit of it because it's about someone turning a crisis into an opportunity. So this cuts into the story when Lazarus has been resurrected and comes home, but his wife's kind of fed up with the fact that he hasn't really changed. And he's still the same shifty git he was. Anyway. Besides, he'd actually been trying to change when he fell ill, to be less of a selfish prick, to get fitter and walking rather than taking the donkey everywhere. He'd even improved his diet and cut out red meat, but had eaten some bad limpets and ended up with paralytic shellfish poisoning. Then Lazarus remembered what had happened on the fourth day underground. Having given up on any thoughts of return, he'd sunk into a boundless peace far beyond anything that word had once invoked. Lying there in the warm, enfolding darkness of hell, whose torments had been farcically overstated, he ceased to cling to life for hope for his return, and had lost all sense of his own boundary. He felt himself become one of the dead, his pronouns shift from I to we, and freed into that radiant collective. And then he realised that was what he'd brought back, the gem he'd loosened from the deep matrix of the earth. A dead man walking was a grand thing to be if he'd already died, alive but done with the fear of death and free from the disapproval of others that used to torment him, since he had no Lazarus to be protective of. And so he allowed the black, glistening jewel to grow inside him. He was still who he was and could never deny or absolve himself of his old life. But he was also all that he was not, everyone and no one. And day by day, the timeless crypt grew inside him like a kind of vow. And because death is good and kind, by degrees, he became a decent and honest man. Excuse me, and I'll finish this bit with a poem from my dad. I don't know if you heard Yentl, the epileptic poodle, snoring towards the end of that poem, but I had to give her a wee nudge. My dad was a guitar player, and he was the best accompanist I'd ever heard, and he had to be because some of the singers that he had to accompany were absolutely dire. But he could always make them sound great, and it was a sort of miracle to me that he managed to do this and do it with such grace. He was a genuinely lovely human being. And this is addressed to one of the worst singers I ever heard him have to deal with in Kirkintilloch one night. Excuse me. It's called On Sounding Good, in Memoriam, Russell Patterson. Sir, know this, that you were utter shite in the Kirkintilloch Social Club that night, when at the bidding of your next of kin, you rushed the stage and counted yourself in, resolved to give it laldy, your best shot, all you had, and more that you did not, in a number you'd pinpointed in advance with a misplaced yet granitic confidence, and a mondegreen of 2 words which belong to the chorus of a wholly different song. And yet my father, on your 1, 2, 3, took one breath to exhume your opening key and shadowed you, as with Apollo's harp, through your ascent from E flat to K sharp. Yet you barely heard the man with the guitar, who guided you towards the final bar and off into the safety of the wing, like the Dalai Lama gently shepherding a drunken wasp towards an open window. Nor, as you reached your bestial crescendo, the usance had lent the guise of logic to each chance event. The seamless cloak of harmony, each stitched and fitted to your Brownian leaps of pitch, a velvet tray of right, made for the wrong, that was the alien spanners of your song. My dad did this because he had an ear like the sea that raised him, open, true, and clear. So on that night, as every night, he chose to make you sound good, or good at least to those who loved you. And since he had love to spare, your knowing this was neither here nor there.
Well, that was wonderful, Don. I found that last poem about your dad just really, really, really touching. I like the fact that it mentioned Kirkentilla Social Club, just up the road from Bishopbriggs, where and where my brother lives. I remember him telling me at the beginning of this crisis that he looked out to the street and he said, "They're having a Corona disco in my street." I couldn't believe it. This was just before lockdown, but they called it that, a Corona disco. You know, amongst themselves. Because it's just like been one of these phrases that's just gone into my head and lodged there. But I really found that just so moving. Your dad, the idea of him making everybody sound better, and just that idea of him having to change his keys in order that somebody else who's singing out of tune can sound better. It's just a lovely idea.
Yeah, it was like a superpower. I mean, it literally seemed like he was psychic because he seemed to know, you know, and it was just the roll of a dice where they would end up. But he always seemed to get there first. It was a kind of a miracle.
Amazing, because I was thinking that between you and me and Katharine, one of the things that we've got in common is that each of our fathers have died in the last couple of years, and each of our fathers really influenced us in terms of our love and passion for music. You know, my dad was a great jazz and blues fan and gave me a lifelong passion for jazz and blues, and your dad too gave you a passion for music, didn't he, Don?
Yeah, very much so. He was a country musician. It was mostly country and bluegrass and Scottish stuff as well. You know, so that was. So I was a big Chris Christopherson fan when I was 10, and remember to this day.
And did you play with your dad ever?
Yeah, I did. That was my first gig. I mean, I started going out with my dad when I was 15. And I think I got sacked round about when I was 18, you know, for jazzing it up a bit too much in the Hank Williams. So I think at that point he decided to collaborate with someone else, but he did it with a great kindness.
and how are you finding this? I mean, one thing that I've thought about my dad, you know, who only died 6 months ago, is that I feel kind of a sense of he didn't live to see these particular times that we're living in. It's the one kind of weird little bonus, if there is any bonus, that I just think he'd have been terribly anxious, and it would have made him very, very worried indeed. And he was saying to me, "For Christ's sake, don't come near, don't come up here." I could hear his voice, I mean, very, very clearly. I mean, because for me, it's not like he's gone very far. He's died, but he's still not gone very far just yet. You know, he's quite close by. How are you finding this experience of lockdown and, you know, lockdown and grief sort of simultaneously?
It's rough. I'm not enjoying it at all. I got to be honest. You know, I'm not having a great lockdown. You know, it's just like, and I think the one thing that you have to do is keep reminding yourself how bad other folk have got it. You know, anytime that you feel yourself starting to grin about it, you know. But it's. I mean, other folk are in a horrible situation. You know, whether they're on their own, whether they're, you know, they're old, you know, without their family, or whether they're trapped in a bad relationship, and suddenly, you know, it doesn't bear thinking about. You know, so I really can't complain. And I've got, you know, as I say, you know, the me and my shadow. This is my spirit animal.
Well, yeah, I'd give anything to have my dog at the moment. I really miss my dog too. You start to miss everything. Miss my dog. It died 5 years ago now. But Katharine, I was thinking that very last poem that Don just read, and actually the second last one, Lazarus, that both of them made you think about dealing with crises in different ways and making an extraordinary best of things. You know, Lazarus comes back and his life is completely changed, and his pronouns have changed. You know, he's changed pronouns, and the fact that he's changed pronouns, being a dead person from I to we, has let him come back to life with something that new that he knows. And in your next song that you're going to pick, the Star of the Bar, there's some kind of amazing miraculous thing that happens there too. Can you tell us a wee bit about that song and what was your reason for choosing it now?
So this song has been a favourite of mine for ever. You know, I've always had sort of just a deep love for it, just because it's got this like dry humour within the song, and I think that matches both those poems really, really well, because ultimately it's a song about sort of not sort of finding the sort of fairy tale ending that you were looking for, and sort of coming to terms with that, and this is fine, because you know things happen, it's fine. And throughout all these sort of hard things happening within your life, you still manage to maintain this sense of like dry humor of going like, oh, this may have happened, but let's just go and have a drink and it'll all be fine. And that's what I really, really like about that song. And what I really like about that last poem as well, I think it was just, just the dry humor within it is just fantastic.
Fantastic. Can we hear it, Katharine? Take it away.
Oh, I'll say you stay if you'll give your attention, and it's nae tale of pity, it's nae tale of woe, and it's nae word of honour or love will I mention, but I'll say, lassie, I ken long ago, nae better than mates, and nae worse as morning, and what drew me to hers, no easy to say. She was cool, she was headless, and she was nae that bonny. But she was the star o' the bar in her day. I surveyed the Royal Mile with her, drinking in style with her, rose tree end to end, often surveyed, fought and swore in the pubs with her, rolled in the dubs with her, cashed money subs frae her, never repaid. Nae better than mates, and nae worse as money, and what drew me to hers, no easy to say. She was cool, she was headless, and she was nae that bonny. But she was for the bar in her day. So ye lads with young lassies, believe me, love soon passes, and all of your bright dreams are mysteries in the wind. Better one who'll sit down with ye, sing a fine tune with ye, pass the glass round with ye, drink herself blind. Nae better than mates, and nae worse as money, and what drew me to hers, no easy to say. She was coos, she was headless, And she was near that bonny, but she was the star for the bar in her day. She was cursed, she was helpless, and she was near that bonny, but she was the star for the bar in her day.
Oh, that was just fantastic. So wonderful to hear that song again. I think that's going to go down as one of my favorite songs now. I just love the story. I love the story that it tells.
Funny.
Yeah, I love the humor in it and the refrain. There's something also kind of there's a great sadness in it as well. It's just got
sort of
everything.
Making the best of it, you know. It's like find someone who's going to have a good time with you, and that's all you need, really.
Exactly, and that's all we need during lockdown. We found you, I found you, and I found Don, and you've both helped this Thursday evening to be a whole lot better, and I hope it's helped everybody out there too. All we want to do in Makar to Makar is provide a wee bit of company from our living rooms to your living rooms in this shared Zoom room. We're also very, very postmodern, but we hope actually what we're doing is providing something quite old-fashioned, which is a really lovely, rich and heady mixture of poetry and song. So this has been our second Makar to Makar. I'd like to thank very, very much Katharine Philpott. I'd like to thank Don Paterson, and I'd like to say a huge thank you to our funders, because without them we wouldn't have been able to pay everybody, and it seemed really important to me in this time when writers and singers and musicians and artists are falling through the cracks of what the government is able to offer and not getting anything at all. It seemed really important that our people, our artists, are getting funded. So thank you very much to the National Theatre of Scotland. They're also our fantastic hosts. Thank you to Edinburgh International Book Festival. Thank you to Home, Manchester. And thank you to the School of Arts and Media at the University of Salford. A huge big thank you. Now, every week, our Makar of the Week, as it were, picks a favourite bookshop and theatre and library, because we really want to encourage you to get your books from an independent bookshop if possible. And so if you want to get Don's Rain or 40 Sonnets or Orpheus or Zonal, then check out his favourite bookshops, which is the Lighthouse in Edinburgh, same choice as mine last week, which is the Lighthouse in Edinburgh, fantastic bookshop, or his second choice is also, or just his favourite, is Topping's Bookshop. So if you could go along to either of these bookshops and get your hand on some of Don Patterson's wonderful work, if you haven't read it already, you're in for a huge treat. That is all that remains for me to be said, except to ask Don, who is going to be the Makar next week?
It's Gerda Stevenson, wonderful poet, writer, wonderful actress, director. Very lucky to have worked with Gerda in the past, so that's going to be a treat.
Fantastic. It's going to be Gerda Stevenson, and she's going to be on with the wonderful singer and actress Claire Brown. So tune in for us next week on Makar to Makar. But before we go, Don has written this new, absolutely stunning poem, a chiller of a poem that kind of left me breathless when I was reading it. It packs a powerful punch. And we were talking last week about whether or not we can write contemporaneously, whether or not we can write good political poems. And it seems to me that this poem absolutely proves that you can write good political and good angry poems. Don, could you tell us a little bit about Easter 2020 before you read it?
It's funny, isn't it? I think, you know, it's when sometimes you're not even aware that you've started writing something, and you're just kind of overcome with the feeling that you have, you know, and the words that is kind of gathering around it, and it's just, you know, and we understandably lose track of how terrible these times are, and what a horrible way to go this is. You know, and how badly some humans are behaving, and how wonderfully others are behaving, that make you just think better of the species, which can be hard sometimes. And yeah, this is what came out. So. Easter 2020. In the ICUs and care homes, they are drowning in their beds, drowning in themselves, like Christ, their airways down to threads, while a blue glove opens FaceTime on an iPad to discover another new contender for worst family photo ever. We love you. Goodbye, Dad. And even if they understand, there's no breath left for the last word. So, into their hands. Meanwhile, at the post of hell we call the cabinet, the rats have figured out the means and gnaw the ends to fit. The headless chickens count themselves but miss the standing duck, and the goats survey the goatscape for just where to pass the buck. The pig is hidden in the toilet since he came down sick, when it turned out happy birthday to me didn't do the trick. And he almost looks into his soul, but switches tack to steer his usual course through what he thinks his buddies want to hear. So if we tell them stay alert and then they all get ill, well, that's on them. It's not our fault the bug's invisible. And they don't know essentials Latin for gets paid jack shit, and heroes Greek for you go first and take the bloody hit. And no one knows the body count if we don't show the charts. Now let's all get the taps back on before the riots start. So one rat texts a laptop jockey at the Daily Scare who wants his Polish cleaner back and his kids out of his hair, who raises up one wine-dark hand to throw the dog a cork and types out with the other, litter angels back to work. Meanwhile, stuck in lockdown, we all stare at the TV where a nurse from County Monaghan in homemade PPE ignores the hack and turns around to face the lens alone, with a stare as hard as nails and a promise cast in stone. If we see your family out, we will love them as our own.
Oh gosh, that last line is so hard, and it was true, wasn't it? I remember seeing that on the television. The idea of people loving our families as their own is just so moving, Don. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you so much to Don Patterson, and thank you again to Katharine Philpott. We'll see you again, we hope. I hope. I'm using we as if I was dead now. I need to say I need to go back to I. I will see you again next week, I hope, on Makar to Makar. Please remember to go out and clap the carers. Thank you for joining us.